हा थोडं उचल, त्याच्या खाली काहीतरी एक ते रामचंद्र गुहाचं पुस्तक घेऊन दे, तसंही वाचणार नाहीस
आता.
कॅमेरा खाली कर ना निखिल, ओनली युअर बियर्ड कॅन बी सीन. अजून थोडंसं कमी कर.
मूव इट मोर टुवर्ड्स द बुक शेल्फ. हा, दिस इज परफेक्ट.
दिस इज नाईस. हे जरा इंटेलिजंट पण वाटतोयस. निखिल, जस्ट बेअर इन माइंड की मी अजून जेवलं नाहीये हा.
Oh my God, you're going to be hangry. Your hangriness will get us through this quickly. Ground rules. I'm going to lay down a proposition. You can accept, deny, interject, memify, think it is stupid, comment that it is stupid, hold me in contempt, and that's all fine. And of course, please feel free to add in your 2 cents, because the whole point of this proposition is to see how much water it carries. Okay. Okay. Ready? Proposition is: has the government lost legal credibility? I am not talking of political credibility. There's a very interesting article by Mr. Harish Khare on political credibility. He wrote that this government may have lost its Iqbal, is the word he uses. Iqbal, if you translate from Persian, is good fortune, or as I would call it, perhaps good faith is what the author was looking at when he wrote that article. And what he meant by it is there was a certain free play in the joints that the judges were willing to extend to this government when it came to creating and executing policy decisions. This was the good faith basis. And the basis for this, the legal basis for extending a sort of good faith cover to governments follows from the barium chemicals case, which itself relies on a previous Privy Council decision where it says that any policy decision of the government cannot be tested for reasonableness, sufficiency, and propriety. You have to presume that it has been made in good faith. What you can test for is arbitrariness and violation of constitutional rights. My proposition to you today is that while the Supreme Court did originally extend the cover of good faith to this government throughout its first term and thereafter in its second term, it seems to have withdrawn this good faith cover or protection.
Khatam. Bye-bye. Tata. Goodbye. Gaya.
Especially in the immediate aftermath of the second wave of our COVID pandemic crisis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rely on the various orders and judgments of the Supreme Court, and of course contrast them with the orders and the judgments of the high courts to draw a distinction between how the Supreme Court dealt with COVID related issues and how the high courts dealt with the same issues at roughly the same time, contemporaneously. And then I'm going to say why the Supreme Court dealt with it differently in phase 1 last year versus why it has dealt with it substantially differently in the second wave in this year. I'm just building the chronology. आप
chronology समझ लीजिए.
आप chronology समझिए कि माइग्रेंट क्राइसिस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने किया क्या या क्या नहीं किया. A lot of good research has gone into this topic by a bunch of researchers who wrote a very interesting article in Bar and Bench. It's important to keep a note of what judges were involved. This is not to profile judges. I would not deign or dare to profile judges because I don't want to be held in contempt. I will make a few jokes at the expense of those judges I think that can take it. I'm not Prashant Bhushan. I can't afford that 1 rupee wala contempt ka fee. So I'm going to restrict my submission to the judges who were involved just to show how even those judges who may have extended this level of good faith cover or Iqbal to the government have now in the second phase of the pandemic withdrawn that cover. Those very judges. And I want to show that. And also I want to show how much difference 1 or 2 judges can make to the entire philosophical dispensation or disposition of the Supreme Court. How much difference it can make. Last year, this whole crisis began in India with the imposition of a lockdown, which happened within 4 hours. 4 hours notice was given to the entire population, 1.3 billion people, to get their logistics in order. And that's it. We are going under lockdown.
The sheer suddenness of the move, the unexpected nature of the move, the unpredictability of the move, they don't know what hit them.
And of course, originally the promise was that we'll do it for a week, 10 days, 15 days, and then it kept getting extended until eventually it lasted for nearly 3 months. Now, one of the first fallouts or the consequences of this lockdown was the migrant crisis. We saw thousands, hundreds of thousands of migrants flooding onto the streets, railway stations, every known form of public transport, trying to figure out their way back to their villages into the hinterland, right? It's played out in the media. Everybody noticed it, was beaming to us live. Under these circumstances, what happened? One of the first, the early movers, so to speak, Aruna Roy approaches the court. Aruna Roy is one of the pioneers of the Manrega scheme. She says, please clear the wages of the Manrega. These transitory workers who are going back, or those who are maybe in place, clear whatever arrears there are for Manrega. At least it will be some amdani in their pocket. 8th April, the court simply recorded again submission of learned SG that an amount has been paid towards arrears as wages, and the court then directed that the matter will be listed 2 weeks after lockdown, when at this stage it was not even clear when the lockdown will end. Then what happens? Member of Parliament Mahua Moitra. Mahua Moitra addressed a letter to the Chief Justice of India. In this letter, of course, she said that, look at the crisis that is going on. We need to urgently address this issue. The government has not been able to rise to this occasion. So now that the consequences are visible for all to see, do something. Now what happens? The Chief Justice took suo motu cognizance. Bear in mind, at that time, the Chief Justice of India was Justice Sharad Bobde. There was this brief ray of hope. This glimmer was there. But this glimmer of hope was very, very short-lived. Nothing happened in that petition. Chief Justice took notice, said, okay, executive seems to be acting, and then dismissed it on 30th.
Oh, they also went on to say that further ordering on her petition would lead to a chaotic situation.
Hey, Safed Kapda, oh!
It gets much worse. I'll show you. Because next in line is Harsh Mandar, another noted social activist. He simply sought the payment of whatever wages were due to the migrants. कि उनके खाते में थोड़ा पैसा तो डाल दो so that they can survive, right? There was one very interesting incident here where the learned Solicitor General made a comment saying wages have already been cleared, arrears have already been cleared. Right? Justice Bobde at that time had remarked, says if they are being provided meals, then why do they need money for meals?
And when they went to the Queen to tell her her subjects had no bread, do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
Thereafter, this petition was also dismissed. After Mr. Harsh Mandar, Swami Agnivesh moved the court. He had also sought that certain relief packages be provided to these people. 21st April, Supreme Court disposes of Swami Agnivesh's matter also. Iqbal, good faith. The learned SG makes a statement and the court believes that the statement has been made in good faith and proceeds. Then one advocate approaches the Supreme Court. Alok Srivastav versus Union of India. He says, look, these migrant workers are walking hundreds of thousands of kilometers back to their homes. You give them some shelter. You set up relief camps for these people. In this petition, two very controversial orders came to be passed. One order was on 31st of March. So on 31st of March 2020, the Solicitor General made a statement that as of 11 a.m. today, on 31st of March, there is no person walking on the roads in an attempt to reach her home in the towns and villages. This statement was made.
इतने तेजस्वी लोग हैं हमारे पास.
Acha, he made further statement. He says mass migration has stopped according to the Union of India. But then the Supreme Court went one step further. It quoted whom? It quoted Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, head of the WHO. Right? It quotes him as saying, we are not just fighting an epidemic, we are fighting an infodemic. Fake news spreads faster and more easily than this virus and is just as dangerous.
Dr. Tedros, U.S. Department of State says early information by Taiwan on isolated treatment in Wuhan was withheld from global community by WHO. They also criticized WHO for choosing politics over global health. How do you respond to
multiple sources of reports?
What is the average running speed of a full-grown male African ostrich?
Pass. Pass to me. I know it. Pass tomorrow.
पहले हम तो डिसिप्लिन सोल्जर है, अध्यक्ष हमारे लिए सब कुछ होते हैं.
This person is quoted very approvingly by our Chief Justice. The Supreme Court doesn't stop there. It then issues directions. We do not intend to interfere with the free discussion about the pandemic, but direct the media, refer to and publish the official version about the developments. But the Supreme Court continued to extend the cover of good faith and Iqbal to this government, even in Alak Alok Srivastav's case. After the fake news order of 31st of March was put up again for 1 or 2 more hearings, and thereafter even that was dismissed. Right?
Nikhil, in Alak Alok Srivastav, there is another side to the whole matter that happened.
Hey, Safed Kapda.
When Supreme Court is referring to the deaths that have occurred, in the initial part of that petition, why was the petition filed actually originally? Because 16 migrant laborers actually went on to sleep on the railway tracks and they died. Also the incident in Guna, Bihar, where 8 migrants died in road accident. Okay. So at that point, when this was pointed out to them that migrants have died, Supreme Court goes on to ask one very important question. What can we do when they are sleeping on the tracks?
Yeah.
The petition also sought the assistance of DMs, district magistrates, to actually identify who are migrant workers and to arrange transportation for them. The Supreme Court rejects this. Why? Because they say the state is responsible and the state should be doing this. And in the end, they have made a sort of personal comment on Alak Alok Srivastav as well, that every lawyer ends up reading newspaper cuttings and you have also done the same and you are relying on newspaper cuttings which are not reliable.
Oh!
But the accountability also, Ranjit, you're right, but the accountability has to be ascertained to the appropriate authorities, that every organ of the state has to be responsible and accountable for whatever jurisdiction and rights and duties the Constitution has put in each organ.
At the outset, you have to admit to an organ failure, which the Supreme Court has categorically refused to do in this. What they are stating is that the machinery that is applied there and the suggestions that have been considered by the center and which have then been passed on through, let's say, MHA orders or through whatever notifications under NDMA that have been passed, they are appropriate and they are taking into account all these problems and the problems have been resolved. That Supreme Court, let's say in 2020, was very willing to accept the information or the statistics that were being submitted to them.
Now, after Alak Alok Srivastav, there was another matter called Jagdeep S. Chokar versus Union of India. Now, in this matter, the main plea was to arrange for safe travel of these migrants. The Supreme Court once again said, yes, lots is being done. Most of this prayer has anyway been granted. You wanted arrangements to be made for these migrants to be transported back. Railways is doing its job. Now we leave it to the center to make whatever executive decision. But one issue about how much tickets prices they're being charged, 15% of the travel fee, etc. The court said we are not interfering in this. Let the center and the states deal with this issue. Then came Sagir Ahmed Khan. He was himself a migrant from Sant Kabir Nagar in Uttar Pradesh, Sagir Ahmed Khan. He sought urgent directions for suitable arrangements to repatriate migrants. कुछ तो arrangement की जाए. Let me try to do something for these people. He moves a public interest litigation. He even had expressed his willingness to pay 25 lakh rupees in deposit. He wanted to deposit 25 lakh rupees with the Supreme Court for the safe repatriation of the migrants. This is the extent to which this person went. What happened? Issued notice May 15th and then Thande Baste mein 2 weeks returnable. Now for 2 weeks, those migrants who are stranded on the streets, they will wait till the center files its affidavit. In all these matters, Supreme Court essentially trusted the center's statements in court.
देखिए ये जुमला है, उनको भी मालूम है और आपको भी मालूम है, देश की जनता को भी मालूम है.
But there was an order wherein the Supreme Court has actually directed the states as well as the center to look into the issue and take corrective steps. But I want to say this, whether they passed an order or they did not pass an order, in your opinion, what should have the Supreme Court have done when the Supreme Court was actually given a reply on behalf of the government that yes, we are looking into it and we have done it? What ought to have been done by the Supreme Court? You see, there is an affidavit or there is an oral statement being made by the highest officer of the government on one side, and on the other you have a opposition MP saying that please look into this and take necessary redressal measures. What, in your opinion, should the Supreme Court ought to have done?
I have a question for you here. How many times have you seen the High Court or even the Supreme Court? I don't know about Supreme Court, but the High Court pulling up government officials for the information that has been submitted in the affidavits?
Many times.
जहां भी बोल सकते हैं झूठ बोलो, जितनी बार बोल सकते हैं झूठ बोलो और जोर जोर से बोलो.
And this is not I don't think that this is a one-off incident.
But if what he says is correct, then we have a very, very serious a serious issue on our hands.
My submission is that we are in the middle of a conflict, a direct conflict between the PMO and the Supreme Court. Now contrast this with what the high courts were doing at the same time. Karnataka, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Bombay, all these high courts basically had started to, even Gujarat High Court had started to take notice that something is amiss here. In fact, Karnataka High Court passed an order on May 12th, which was highlighted by Mr. Fali Nariman no less, saying this is a very nice, very good order constitutionally speaking. And one of the observations that the Karnataka High Court made was, prima facie, it appears to us that considering the constitutional rights of the migrant workers, no one should be deprived of an opportunity to go back to his own state, only for the reason that he has no capacity to pay for the transport. Bearing in mind, Supreme Court had previously dismissed the petitions pertaining to transportation costs. Similarly, in Gujarat, in suo motu orders dated 11th of May and 14th of May 2020, the High Court has said we would not like to interfere with day-to-day functioning of state government in this regard, but at the same time, we should ensure that the situation does not go from bad to worse. In such a circumstance, the judiciary will have to intervene. This was the first order that it passed. Then on May 14th, it took notice of various measures that the state had taken, but also sought a reply on the steps taken to ensure the repatriation of migrant workers without charging them money and providing food if necessary, the basic necessities. Then Madras High Court was hearing habeas corpus petition on behalf of 400 migrant workers from Tamil Nadu who were detained in Maharashtra, who basically marooned in Maharashtra. They were stuck in Maharashtra. And the High Court expressed its anguish at the lack of coordination and cooperation. It is a pity to see the migrant laborers walking for days together to reach their native places, and in the process, some of them had lost their lives due to accidents. When the Supreme Court said, what can we do if they sleep on railway tracks? Now, I'm going to come to this High Court versus Supreme Court distinction also. There is, of course, a distinction between Article 32 and Article 226. But my submission is, when Article 21, right to life, is involved, then really that distinction is blurred. Additionally, if one looks at the scheme of the Constitution, let's look at list 3 of the Constitution, the concurrent list, because it's key. So if you see 29 of concurrent list 3, it says prevention of the extension from one state to another of infectious or contagious diseases or pests affecting men, animals, or plants. This is list 3. Look at list 1, which is union list. So entry number 81 of list 1 reads interstate migration, interstate quarantine. Simple. Does this require any great inference, any leap in logic to be able to say that, boss, Article 21 is involved, interstate migration is involved, labor is involved, and health and infectious contagion is involved? All the metrics are met, which is not to absolve states of their own responsibility. They're equally responsible. The pandemic introduced a pan-national failure of governance. This was abundantly clear in the first wave of this crisis to begin with. And when people approached the Supreme Court, well-meaning people with well-founded credentials approached the Supreme Court asking for eminently reasonable relief, which is justifiable under the scheme of our constitution, indeed which is a commandment under our constitution. And the Supreme Court said, Saab Changasi! Because we A, believe institutional conflict ought not to arise unnecessarily, and B, that there is well-established precedent in how to deal. The government executive must enjoy free play between the joints. For the sake of argument, let us say that the Supreme Court was being reasonable and all the other high courts were being unreasonable. Let's, for the sake of argument, say that that's what was going on. But then the Supreme Court should have been consistent. That also did not happen. What happens? Now, perturbed by the inaction of the perceived inaction of the Supreme Court, the bar wrote a very, very strongly worded letter to the Chief Justice of India, saying ki chal kya raha hai, please open your eyes, your lordships, and see what is the ground reality. And again, I'm paraphrasing. The letter says much worse than what I am saying. It said a lot. But it appeared to have hit the mark. It appeared to have had some desired effect, because the moment that letter reached the Supreme Court, what happens? The Supreme Court issues suo motu notice once again, just like Mahua Moitra. But instead of dismissing like Mahua Moitra, they begin this new suo motu petition. It's relying on the same newspapers and the same media. Now it says, this court has also received several letters and representations from different sections of society highlighting the problem of migrant laborers. The crisis of migrant laborers is even continuing today, with large sections still stranded on roads, highways, railway stations and state borders. Still stranded on roads, highways, railway stations and state borders as of 26th of May 2020. So the Supreme Court, which dismissed petitions saying this is all fake news based less than a month and a half ago, and then accepted the SG's version when he said as of 11 a.m. today, not a single migrant laborer is on the road. A month and a half later says they are still on the road and at railway stations and at bus depots. The same Supreme Court. Chalo, der aaye, durust aaye, janab, aaya to sahi. To this petition, by the way, continues for quite a while thereafter, but it marked, according to me, one first sincere change in approach by the Supreme Court, where they said, well, maybe it's not all fake news and social media. Maybe it's not opposition politicians rushing to this court under the garb of Article 32 and PIL. Maybe there is some truth to the migrant crisis. It took their lordships 3 months to come around to this view, but they eventually came around to this view that
ये झूठ है, झूठ है, झूठ है.
कृपया ध्यान दीजिए.
Some course correction was attempted by the Supreme Court in the latter half of May last year. I am arguing it went nowhere far enough, because later in that year, 5 well-known retired bureaucrats and social activists, primary among them Mr. K.P. Fabian, moved a writ petition before the Supreme Court asking that accountability be fixed for the failure of planning and utter mismanagement of the first lockdown and the attendant consequences. Now, Mr. K.P. Fabian is not an ordinary individual. Mr. K.P. Fabian is the same person who was in charge of the Air India logistical operation for the first airlift of stranded Indians during the first Gulf War. This man is a hero. इनके ऊपर आज पिक्चरें बनती है, वो जो अक्षय कुमार की पिक्चरें बनी है ना, एयरलिफ्ट.
Let me guess. आपने पहचाना नहीं मुझे.
I remember.
No, you don't.
That is based on Mr. Fabian's effort. This is a man who knows something about operations and about logistics. When a person of this repute approaches you and says, boss, something has gone wrong, especially when you have yourself tacitly, de facto, in fact, de jure recognized that something has gone wrong because you corrected in your suo motu petition and said, okay, there is a migrant crisis, we should do something about it. When you have engaged in self-correction, go all the way. What do? You dismiss Mr. Fabian's petition. After having engaged in a previous course correction exercise, the court then says, there may be a course correction, but there doesn't appear to be a need for accountability. That's how I read this particular order, although obviously it is not on merits.